This is it, he thought. The moment the poor show their true colors, not even a child can resist such temptation. In his luxurious study, billionaire Leonard Armstrong sat motionless in a leather armchair. With his eyes closed and his breathing steady, any onlooker would have thought he was deep in sleep. But no, his mind was sharper than ever. His mind's eye was fixed on the safe, standing wide open a few feet away. Stacks of crisp dollar bills were strewn carelessly on the floor, a perfectly set trap. Let's see, he thought to himself, a bitter smile flashing through his mind. How long innocence lasts in the face of greed. Too many betrayals had taught him a single rule: trust no one. The door creaked softly. Amara, the 10-year-old daughter of his housekeeper, tiptoed in. She had come to call him for dinner. Suddenly, she froze, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. "Oh," she gasped softly, quickly covering her mouth, afraid of waking Mr. Leonard. Her focus wasn't on the value of the money, but on its messiness against the expensive rug. She approached quietly, whispering to herself, just loud enough for Leonard to hear. Mr. Leonard dropped his money. "It's so messy," she mumbled. "Mommy taught me not to touch things that don't belong to me, but I'm just helping him tidy up." Leonard, still with his eyes closed, held his breath. His jaded heart unexpectedly skipped a beat. This was not the reaction he had been expecting. Amara knelt on the soft Persian rug. She had no intention of taking a single bill. Instead, with the meticulous care of a child performing an important task, she began to pick up each stack, smoothing out the bent corners and arranging them into a neat pile. Just then, the study door opened once again. "Amara, are you in here? It's time." Mosey's voice trailed off. She stood frozen in the threshold, her face drained of all color, her eyes wide with horror. The scene before her was a living nightmare. Her daughter was kneeling next to the wide-open safe, a thick stack of money in her small hands. "Amara." It wasn't a shout, but a frantic hiss that caught in her throat. She lunged forward, not as an angry mother, but as a protective animal shielding her young from a deadly threat. Her trembling hands scrambled to gather the remaining stacks from the floor, shoving them chaotically back into the safe. "What are you doing in here?" Mosey whispered, her voice laced with terror. She grabbed her daughter's shoulders, giving them a gentle shake. "What have I taught you? Why are you in here?" Amara looked bewildered, her clear eyes welling with tears at her mother's panic. "Mommy, I only saw Mr. Leonard's money had fallen, so I was helping him put it back." "You don't." Mosey cut her off, her voice stern but trembling. She slammed the safe door shut. The dry clack of the lock rang out like a verdict. She turned, kneeling to face Amara, her hands gripping her daughter's shoulders tightly. "Look at me, Amara. Promise me. Never, do you hear me? Never touch things that don't belong to you. No matter how beautiful, no matter how valuable. Promise me." I promise," Amara whimpered, tears beginning to stream down her cheeks. Still feigning sleep, Leonard heard every word. He didn't just hear a mother's lecture, he felt the raw fear in Mosey's voice. She wasn't afraid her daughter was a thief. She was afraid the world would see her as one. The trap he'd laid hadn't caught a thief. It had revealed a treasure far more precious than all his money, pure honesty and unconditional love. The wall of ice around his heart began to thaw. As Mosey was trying to comfort the sobbing Amara, a deep, clearing throat echoed from the armchair. "Ahem." Mosey flinched as if struck, her heart plummeting. She spun around, horrified, to see Leonard Armstrong slowly sitting up. He hadn't been sleeping, he had seen everything. "Sir, I'm so sorry." She was being foolish. Mosey stammered, pulling Amara behind her like a human shield, ready to accept any punishment. But Leonard simply held up a hand, a gentle gesture for silence. He didn't look at her with the anger or contempt she expected. Instead, his jaded eyes held something complex, a hint of shame, a flicker of astonishment, and a warmth that hadn't been there in a very long time. He stood and walked slowly forward, not toward the safe, but toward the mother and daughter. He knelt on one knee, bringing himself to the frightened little girl's eye level. "Your name is Amara, isn't it?" His voice was unexpectedly gentle. Amara nodded, still cowering behind her mother. "I'm sorry," Leonard said, his words stunning Mosey. "I was wrong to doubt you. You are a very honest and kind girl. Your mother has taught you well." He looked up at Mosey, who was still too shocked to speak. "I set a trap, Mosey, an ugly trap to test someone's character, and the two of you have taught me a lesson all my money could never buy." The next day, Mosey and Amara's lives changed completely. Leonard summoned Mosey to his study. This time, the safe was closed, but a thick envelope lay on the desk. "I can't accept this, sir. My salary is more than enough," Mosey said, hastily refusing as Leonard pushed the envelope toward her. "This isn't a salary," Leonard said firmly. "It's a bonus, an investment in Amara's future. Use it for her schooling. I want her to have the best education possible." His gaze was firm, leaving no room for refusal. "And please, stop calling me sir. Just call me Leonard." The changes didn't stop there. The cold mansion, once accustomed only to silence and curt commands, began to fill with the warmth of a home. That evening, as Mosey was setting a single place at the long mahogany dining table, Leonard walked in. "Mosey," he said, his voice calm, "from now on, please set 2 more places." Mosey froze, a porcelain plate still in her hand. "For guests, sir?" "No," Leonard replied, looking directly at her without a trace of hesitation. "For you and Amara. This room is too large and too quiet for one person." The first dinner was a bit awkward. Mosey barely dared to touch her food, and Amara timidly looked around. But the silence didn't last long. "Mr. Leonard," Amara piped up, shattering the formal atmosphere. "I drew a lion in class today. My teacher said I drew a very good mane. It was all fluffy, just like your hair when you wake up." Mosey looked horrified and started to shush her daughter, but Leonard let out a laugh. A real laugh, a bit rusty and awkward from disuse, but completely genuine. That laugh was like a key, unlocking a door that had been sealed shut for years. "Is that so? You'll have to show me that drawing sometime," he said, a warm smile on his lips. The evenings soon became a warm routine. The lonely clinking of Leonard's silverware was replaced by lively conversation. He listened as Amara chattered happily about the butterflies in the garden, a difficult math problem at school, and Mosey's simple stories about her hometown. Another evening, he found Amara sitting cross-legged on the library rug, struggling to sound out a word in a massive encyclopedia. "Mr. Leonard," she asked, looking up, "this word is hard. What does chari thank you mean?" Leonard sat down on the floor beside her, an act the other staff members wouldn't have believed if they saw it. He explained gently, "Charity means doing something kind for someone from your heart, without expecting anything in return. Like when you tidied up the money for me, that was a kind act, too." Amara thought for a moment. Then her face lit up. "Oh, so Mommy does charity too. She brings soup to the old lady next door when she's sick and never takes any money." Leonard was silent for a moment. He looked at the innocent girl and her kind-hearted mother. He realized that kindness and compassion weren't found in his vast bank accounts. They existed right here in the smallest, simplest acts. The staff began to whisper amongst themselves. "Did you see that? The boss. He just laughed with the housekeeper's girl. I've worked here for 10 years, and I've never seen him sit on the floor before." The peace in the mansion, however, was as fragile as the afternoon light. It was shattered one Tuesday afternoon as Leonard sat in the conservatory with Amara, showing her how to tell the different types of roses apart. A tall, thin figure in an expensive but slightly worn suit stepped quietly into view. The new guard at the gate had been fooled by smooth words and a familiar name. "Leonard, you look as sharp as ever." The voice, both familiar and foreign, made Leonard stiffen. The smile froze on his lips. He turned slowly. Standing not far away was Alex Vance, once his right-hand man, his second brain, the person he had trusted more than anyone in the world, and the one who had driven the knife deepest into his back. "Alex," Leonard said, his voice like ice, "what are you doing here?" I know, Alex said, holding up his hands, a pleading, repentant smile on his face. "I have no right to be here, but I had to try, Leonard. I've been out in the wilderness, and I've realized the only place I belong is here, by your side." Amara peeked out from behind Leonard, curious about the strange man. "We have nothing to talk about," Leonard said, standing up and instinctively shielding Amara completely. "You stole from me. You broke my trust. This conversation was over 2 years ago." "It was a mistake," Alex insisted, taking a step forward, his voice earnest. "The most terrible mistake of my life. I was weak. I was foolish. But for the past 2 years, I've paid the price. Not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about coming back, to make amends, to serve you again. No one understands you like I do, Leonard. No one can anticipate our rivals' moves like I can." Just then, Mosi emerged with a tray of lemonade. She stopped short, sensing the tense atmosphere and seeing the stranger. Alex glanced at Mosi, then at Amara hiding behind Leonard's leg. His gaze swept past them as if they were part of the scenery, utterly insignificant. He turned his focus back to his target. "Please, give me another chance," Alex begged. "Just one chance to prove I've changed. I'll do anything." Leonard was silent for a long moment. His eyes scanned Alex's face, the face that once represented loyalty, now just a mask of deceit. Then he looked down at Amara, at the small hand clutching his pant leg, and at Mosi, standing in the distance with a worried expression. "You're right, Alex," Leonard finally said, his voice deceptively calm. "You made a mistake, but not because you were weak. You were wrong because you have no integrity, and that's something that can't be relearned." He gently placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "Now, leave. My family needs their privacy." The word family struck Alex like a slap. He was stunned. He looked again, properly this time. He no longer saw them as scenery. He saw them with dawning, horrified recognition. The housekeeper and her daughter. This was the family Leonard was talking about. A venomous rage ignited in Alex's chest. The plea in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, contemptuous glare. He had been replaced, not by a worthy adversary, but by those he considered his inferiors. This humiliation stung more than being fired. "I see," Alex said, his voice now devoid of any remorse, laced only with carefully concealed venom. He gave a falsely polite nod. "I wish you and your new family all the best." Alex turned and walked away, his posture calm, but the fist in his pocket was clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. He no longer craved Leonard's trust. Now, he wanted only one thing: to destroy it. He would prove to Leonard that the faith he'd placed in those paupers was just another deception, as cheap and fragile as their origins. The mansion gates closed behind Alex, but his mind remained inside. Leonard's words, "my family," seared his pride like a red-hot blade. The feigned remorse quickly morphed into a cold fury, and a vicious plan for revenge began to form. He would not be rushed. Alex knew Leonard's greatest weakness was his trust. Once broken, it would crumble to dust. His goal wasn't money, it was to annihilate the very belief Leonard had just rediscovered. Waiting for the perfect moment, Alex watched the mansion from afar. The opportunity came on a Sunday afternoon, when he knew Leonard had an important meeting and Mosi had taken Amara out. The house would be all but empty. He didn't use the main gate. As a former assistant, he knew all about a side entrance near the kitchen where the security system had a blind spot. A few seconds later, the door clicked open in silence. Inside, he went straight to Leonard's study. He didn't touch the safe. A theft like that would be too obvious. His plan was far more sophisticated. From a desk drawer, he took a Patek Philippe watch and a pair of gold cufflinks, sentimental items Leonard would immediately notice were missing. But the theft was just the first step. The most important part was planting the evidence. He crept toward the staff quarters. Inside Mosey's small room, he sneered in contempt at its simplicity. He took one of Mosey's cheap silver earrings, returned to the study, and deliberately dropped it under the desk, a discreet place, but one that would surely be found in a thorough search. Next, he made his most vicious move. He took the Patek Philippe watch and went to Amara's bed, where a worn-out teddy bear lay. With a small blade, he made a short, skillful incision along the seam on the bear's back. He stuffed the watch inside, amidst the soft cotton, then stitched it back up clumsily, intentionally leaving a few loose threads, as if it had been done in a hurry. "Let's see," Alex thought, a wicked smile spreading across his face. "When you find your watch inside her precious toy, will you still believe in her innocence, Leonard?" He grabbed a few stray bills from the desk to fake a messy scene, then left the mansion as silently as he had entered. The trap was set, and it was 100 times more vicious than the one Leonard had used to test Amara. When Leonard returned, he stood frozen in his study. The room, once a symbol of his power and order, was now a scene of chaos. A few stray bills were scattered on the floor. A desk drawer was ajar. But the mess outside was nothing compared to the storm raging in his mind. In his palm, he clutched the cheap silver earring the housekeeper had just found under the desk, one of Mosey's earrings. Everything spun. The demons of his past, the ghosts of betrayal, they all rose up and whispered in his ear. "See, we told you so. No one can be trusted. Kindness is just a mask. Greed is their true nature." He remembered Mosey's smile, Amara's innocence. Was it all just an elaborate act? Had they been waiting, patiently like predators, to earn his trust only to strike? Doubt was a poison, seeping into every fiber of his being, paralyzing his reason and freezing his heart all over again. His face grew cold and distant, the face of the Leonard Armstrong before Amara. Just then, the door opened a crack. Amara tiptoed in, clutching her old teddy bear. She saw Mr. Dam, Leonard standing motionless, his back to her, but she could feel a heavy sadness and anger enveloping him. "Mr. Leonard," her voice was clear, rising like a single, stray note in a chaotic symphony. Leonard flinched and turned. For a fleeting moment, he hastily hid the earring in his pocket, as if to keep her innocence from being tainted by the ugly proof. He looked at Amara, and for the first time, his gaze held a cold scrutiny. "Amara, leave. I'm busy," he said, his voice dry. Amara froze at his distant tone. She saw the confusion and pain in his eyes, but she wasn't afraid. She didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped closer, her small feet moving with determination across the expensive rug. She stopped before him, tilting her head up, her clear eyes looking directly into the eyes of the giant of a man lost in shadow. "Are you sad?" she asked simply. Leonard didn't answer. He just stared at her, a fierce battle raging within him. Could those eyes lie? Seeing his silence, Amara continued, her voice steady and earnest, as if sharing the most important secret in the world. "Mr. Leonard, my mommy taught me that the truth always comes to light, and that good people always win." The words, so simple and naive, struck the wall of doubt Leonard had just erected with the force of a lightning bolt. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't a plea. It was a declaration of faith. Leonard's mind flashed back to the moment Amara had knelt to stack his money. He remembered her whisper, "Mommy taught me not to touch things that don't belong to me." He remembered the look of sheer terror on Mosey's face, her fear not of losing money, but of her daughter being misunderstood. Could the mother who taught her daughter those words be a thief? Could the child who believed those words with all her heart be an actress? The confusion on Leonard's face slowly dissolved, replaced by a powerful resolve. He was no longer a victim of the evidence. Amara's words had jolted him awake. There was another truth, one that was being hidden. He knelt on one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. His large hand rested gently on her shoulder. "Thank you, Amara," he said, his voice warm once more. "You're right. The truth always comes to light, and I'm going to find it." The instant Amara stopped speaking, Leonard was in motion. He was no longer a confused victim. He was a hunter. He picked up the phone and called his head of security. "Harris," he said, his voice assertive, "we've had a breach. Check the system logs and perimeter cameras from this afternoon. Find me a suspicious vehicle." A single, curt command was all it took. Leonard hung up and dialed another number. "Sterling, Alex Vance. I want his location and what he's driving." Immediately, while he waited, Leonard surveyed the scene again. This wasn't a robbery. It was a message. The thief knew the sentimental value of the stolen items, knew the earring belonged to Mosi, and was malicious enough to hide the evidence in a child's toy. Only one person knew all of that. Only one person had the motive. The phone rang. It was Harris. "Sir, the side door system was disabled at 2 p.m. A camera caught a grey sedan circling the area before that. We have the plates." Almost immediately, Sterling called back. "Leonard, Alex Vance is at a motel on the outskirts of town, driving a grey sedan. The plates match." Everything was clear. Alex had used Leonard's own suspicion against him, but he had miscalculated one thing: the power of a child's truth. A cold calm settled over Leonard. He had all the proof he needed. Personal revenge was a fool's game. He would use the power of the law. He dialed a secure number. "Agent Miller," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Leonard Armstrong, I have a case for you. The name is Alex Vance. I'm sending you his location and all the information. He broke into my home and framed 2 innocent people for the theft. Handle him." He hung up. The play was over. The truth was out, and justice was on its way. After the call with Agent Miller ended, Leonard didn't feel the triumph of a victor. Instead, a profound sense of shame washed over him. He had been on the brink of repeating the greatest mistake of his life, letting suspicion poison his mind and condemn the innocent. If it hadn't been for Amara, he would have cast the mother and daughter out of his life, and the wall of ice around his heart would have been rebuilt, this time thicker and higher than ever before. He went to find Mosi and Amara. They were in the kitchen, Mosi anxiously wiping down an already clean counter, while Amara sat quietly, clutching her teddy bear. Their faces were etched with uncertainty. "Mosi, Amara," Leonard began, his voice deep and slightly trembling. Mosi flinched, nearly dropping her cloth. "Sir, I'm sorry," Leonard said, the words coming out with difficulty but utterly sincere. "I've found the truth. The thief was Alex. He framed you both to destroy my trust in people again." Mosi brought a hand to her mouth, her tears of fear now turning into tears of relief. Leonard knelt on one knee before Amara, just as he had the first time he'd realized her innocence. "I'm sorry that for even a second I doubted you and your mother. I was wrong." He looked from the kind-hearted mother to the innocent daughter. Alex, with all his polish and status as a trusted assistant, was rotten to the core. But Mosi and Amara, who had nothing but their working hands and honest hearts, possessed a priceless treasure: integrity. In that moment, Leonard truly understood. Trust couldn't be built on wealth or social status. It wasn't found in expensive suits or eloquent words. It was built on character, on the smallest of actions, on an integrity that could never be bought. A few weeks later, the atmosphere in the mansion had completely transformed. The line between employer and employee had vanished. Leonard, Mosi, and Amara sat together at the dinner table each night, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely wanted to be there. Amara's laughter became the sweetest music in the house. One afternoon, while tending the rose garden with Amara, Leonard said to Mosi, "This mansion is no longer your place of work, Mosi. I want it to be our home." That year, Leonard Armstrong formally adopted Amara, giving her the future he knew she so richly deserved. He had learned the most priceless lesson of his life, that honesty and kindness were assets that money could never buy, and that sometimes the most important lessons, the ones that can save a soul, come from the humblest of sources. From a little girl with the simple faith that the truth always comes to light, and good people always win.